Okay, folks, I've spent some time reading about the plausible spiritual life of Jeffrey Epstein. Obviously, that's a wonderful topic to introduce in an opening conversation when you're on a first date with someone beautiful or handsome. Trust me about that. But in this video, I just want to re-emphasize that Jeffrey Epstein was not meaningfully Jewish, okay? If you want to, you can look up standard Jewish ideas about self-restraint and, transcending the sort of animal or lesser self, and what kinds of norms are appropriate for a man, especially when he might feel, lustful impulses. You can find out what is advised just in general within pretty much any standard, respectable, enduring, resilient form of Judaism. And then you will, perhaps go down the rabbit hole and find out about what Jeffrey Epstein did, which was a sort of, I think you would call it like an antinomian rebellion against the traditions of the people with whom he's, ethnically affiliated. So basically, to report something about what I think is healthy for someone who deviates from whatever is normal for other people. If you grow up with a certain set of traditions, values, norms, customs, practices, and reverences, and then you go away from those very sharply, then I think if you're healthy, you will at least retain some sort of cool-headed appreciation for some of the merits of what you grew up with, right? I was raised as a Brahmin, so, I don't sustain all the disciplines that I did as a Brahmin kid, but I still avoid smoking, drinking, promiscuity, hostilities toward others, especially those who are poor or disabled. I do what I can to kind of guard my speech, and so on and so forth, So I cannot claim that I'm sort of a good Brahmin because in certain ways I exist in a state of opposition to what I regard as the sort of anti-human components of my upbringing. But that being said, I appreciate riches from my background. Jeffrey Epstein is, according to certain things I've read, but have not looked into super deeply, someone who obviously, I guess, took the concept of sin in some way or another, and he turned it into like a grotesque mission of sorts. Okay, I think it's very clear that he might have had clinically significant psychopathy in combination with high intelligence and predilection toward instantiating sadistic impulses. So what does this tell you? Well, it's a common perception people have that if you have the right sort of religion in your childhood, the right sort of mentors, the right sort of influences, the right sorts of fears, you're going to mature into something that'll be good for others, or at least safe and harmless. But as someone who doesn't know too much about Epstein's upbringing, what I assume about him is that he might have had kind of mutant traits or something that made it so that if he encountered certain ideas that are esteemed within a religion, he would at some point start to romanticize the most degenerate conceivable deviation from that, So I think a healthy person can appreciate the merits of something even if they don't plan to adopt a certain worldview or set of practices themselves. But someone like an Epstein or, maybe several others who have abused power in certain ways will, I think, have some sort of inclination to look at something that is manifestly healthy and time-tested and worth proliferating, and they will selfishly denature it for their own purposes. So basically, what I mean to put forth here is that the biological makeup of someone who engages with what you call sacred is more important than the presumed effects of that sacred set of ideas, practices, customs, norms, values, etc. Okay? A psychopath will approach your traditions in a way that benefits him, perhaps by hoarding money and teaching you to pridefully neglect the poor. And an altruist, or someone with the nature of a tzaddik, or a sort of Christ-like temperament, will take what you value and turn it into a means by which to ennoble you on your own terms, or at least on non-insufferable terms. So once you learn about things like maybe psychopathy, sociopathy, narcissism, etc., without becoming obsessed with these ideas, you might be able to discern whether or not certain folks who claim your background or your tribal affiliation or your in-group status are actually any good for you, or other adherents of the sort of faiths or practices you regard as sacred. Spend some time focusing on the biological preconditions needed to practice your faith properly. That might lead to some pretty interesting insights.